Hello, welcome to a new video in which we are going to be discussing the very important topic of underrated books. Now, some of these have simply just not got the credit they deserve, so we're going to be discussing that. These are all books that I have rated either 4-star or 5 stars. I really want to encourage you to read them if they're sat on your shelf or add them to your TBR. I've got my prawn cocktail crisps with me. These are serving the double purpose of filling my stomach, and also prawn cocktail is an underrated flavour. It truly deserves more. More love and respect. So there is actually an underrated book tag that is on YouTube, but I don't really love the questions. So I've kind of made my own categories up. I've got 6 categories, and so let's just go. So first category is the overshadowed one. So picture like you're a younger sibling and your older sibling is so high achieving, so good in school, and people kind of forget about your accomplishments. So for this I've chosen I Am the Messenger by Markus Zusak, because this is one of my favourite books of all time, and as we know, Markus Zusak is known for The Book Thief, which is so well known and so well beloved. I actually prefer this one. I just connected to it more. What I think is really interesting is if you love The Book Thief, you should absolutely check this out as one of Markus Zusak's other books. But if you don't like The Book Thief, this is completely different. It's different writing style. It's contemporary. So it's not like historical fiction or lyrical or anything like that. The plot is wild, okay? You have this guy who's, I don't want to say he's a loser, but I think he thinks of himself as a loser because he doesn't have his life kind of like sorted. Who's called Ed, and you know, he just has this boring life. But one day he accidentally stops a bank robbery. So that's a time. And the same day, an ace of diamonds from a pack of cards is mailed to him. And on it is information about someone. And Ed has to kind of figure out what the heck is this playing card I've been given. And basically, he receives these cards with a message to somebody. And he's like the messenger bringing this... I really want to describe this well. Okay, let me start again. Ed is a messenger. He doesn't understand the messages he's given. He doesn't know who is giving him the messages to deliver to someone else. And these messages help really hurting people in their lives. Please say you understood that. Like, vibe with me here, people. It's so good, so quirky, so amazing. The next category is the misunderstood one. This is a book that a lot of people have read and a lot of people have disliked. And I just want to represent it and say this book has been misunderstood. And that is The Scorch Trials, the second book in the Maze Runner series by James Dashner. Now, I think a common experience is a lot of people like the first book, The Maze Runner, as they should. You know, if you don't know, it's this really cool dystopian book where a group of teenage boys are just randomly keep getting dropped into this random place called the maze, and they've learnt to survive, but they have no idea why they're there or how at all they could escape. Obviously can't go into this too much being book number 2, but I thought this was the most epic read ever. I loved The Maze Runner, and then I even preferred this one, and most people say it went so downhill from the first one, but I just think this had so much going on, so it was such a thrill for me. I don't know why I picked a second book in a series because I can't fully talk about it. What I really want to say is justice for The Scorch Trials. I'm just saying you guys are doing this book dirty. You're doing the whole series dirty. Like, people keep throwing out the whole, oh, it's not the best written book, is it? Like, no. A book doesn't have to be well written, okay? Like, follow me here, people. Of course, it's great when it is, when the writing is beautiful, but this is a plot-driven, crazy ride, and you all should hop on said ride, scream a little bit, throw your hands in the air. Maybe you'll get an upset stomach at some point. It's just part of the experience, okay? Let's move on. The next category is the one for an acquired taste. Now, this is a book where I'm absolutely not recommending it to everyone, because even I was a bit like, what was that? But ultimately I was like, yes, I am a big fan of whatever that was. So this book I have chosen is The Bees by Laline Poole. Now, this book is pitched really weirdly as a mix between The Handmaid's Tale and The Hunger Games. Now, I've not read The Handmaid's Tale, but I'm still convinced that that pitch is wrong. Like, this is just straight up about bees, okay? Straight up. We're not being tricked. We're not, no one is fooling you here. This book is about the bees. Bees plural, many bees. So we have a bee, okay? The bee is the protagonist, right? You kind of, sometimes you have to kind of imagine them as people, like I did, to kind of follow the story, because we read through the perspective of a bee. Sure, why not? So our bee is called Flora, who, you know, we're seeing the world with. And she's essentially one of the lowest of the low bees, because all the bees are ranked, you know, we've got queen bee at the top. And you learn about all the ranking systems. Now, Flora is just trying to survive in this extremely harsh environment. Bees get massacred, abused by other bees, get invaded by wasps. I know it can sound ridiculous, but the book is written very, you know, very seriously. We're not having a joke here, like we're seeing bees in deep anguish, which I know sounds so surreal, but you've just kind of got to go with it a bit. So I realise I haven't really described the plot of this book, but truth be told, I have no idea how to. If you are intrigued by the fact that this is about bees, most of the bees are like evil, bloody, ruthless, and we're just following a bee trying to survive, trying to protect her queen. Check this out. And you learn a lot about bees. You really do. A lot about bees. My next underrated book category is The Forgotten One. We're talking a backlist book here that got really hyped and then that just fell away and it's been forgotten about. So for this I'm picking The Young Elites and kind of the series by Marie Lu. Now obviously this is a very popular author. I guess this book is quite low rated on Goodreads. It has under 4 stars, which I think it definitely deserves more. So we follow Adelina. Now she's had a very kind of harsh childhood. She's a malfetto, which means she's an outcast by the way she looks and appears. And her dad reached the point where her father just wants to get rid of her. And so he plots to sell her off as a mistress to an older man. And this extremely like stressful situation actually triggers powers in Adelina, and she discovers she is a young elite. Now young elites are people with powers who are getting killed off by whoever the government is. They're seen as a threat, and we kind of realise she's actually super powerful and it was all being harboured inside her, and no one knew she had powers until kind of this event releases her powers, which really reminds me of Credence in Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, if you know what I'm talking about. But I think this series is so exciting. Adelina is not a stereotypical protagonist in the slightest. Like, sure, that trope of, oh, realising she has powers is cliche, but the story she embarks upon is not. We see her become twisted and not at all the hero you expect her to be. You know, this is not Harry Potter discovering he's a wizard. It's quite a dark story. So if you're interested in young adult fantasy and haven't given this a go, I really recommend it. My next underrated book category is the educational one. Not many people have read this, but I think it's a really valuable read to teach you about something. So my book pick is The Collected Schizophrenias by, I think, Esme Wujan Wang. So if I said that wrong. So this is essay / autobiographical. Is that right? Autobiographical. Piece of non-fiction about Esme. There she is. Who has schizoaffective disorder, which is a type of schizophrenia. And she writes about how she gets misdiagnosed throughout her life. She was diagnosed with bipolar disorder for the longest time, and finally she gets this diagnosis. And we just hear a lot about her describing what it feels like to experience delusions, experience hallucinations, and the water ripple effects within her life of living with this type of mental illness. My favourite parts to read about were her experiences within mental health settings, such as being detained under the Mental Health Act. Those were really interesting and educational. And I think for the most part this was a very accessible read. Even if you know nothing about schizophrenia or things like the Mental Health Act, I think you could pick this up and really learn a lot. My last category for underrated books is the recently read one. Now, I read this on ebook, so I don't have the physical book, but it was In the Penal Colony by Franz Kafka. Now, okay, this book was wacky. Shall we say wacky? Unusual. It's a short story. It's about, I think, 60 pages long, and it is literally, it's all about a traveller who goes to this colony and learns about their capital punishment system. So they basically have a machine that administers capital punishment. We go into gruesome, gory detail about how this machine works, and it's essentially by needles inscribing the criminal's sentence onto their back over the course of 12 hours, eventually killing them. So we learn about the mechanics of this machine. We hear it all from the perspective of this super sadistic officer who's in charge, you know, of running the machine. And we just hear how passionate he is about not just justice, but this particular, like, cruel form of justice. And it definitely reminded me of the character of Javert from Les Miserables. I don't have the French accent down for that one. Javert is definitely not like kind of twisted as this officer, but they're both so headstrong for justice, and I think it definitely like clouds their decisions. So I thought if you like Kafka, you'd really like this. I would just say, by the way, this is gory and uncomfortable. Like, ooh. Do you know what I'm saying? Okay, so that's it for all my categories. Here are the books I recommended, plus In the Penal Colony, which I don't have a physical copy of. But yeah, please discuss with me, okay? Let me know if you've read these, what you thought about them. Trash my opinion if you must. I'll trash you back. It's peace and love, people. It's fine. It's fine. They are my babies, but it's okay. If you don't hold them as dear to your heart as I do, no problem. We can still be friends. But if you haven't read them, okay, consider reading them, please. Consider going on to Goodreads, clicking want to read, add to TBR, you know, I strongly urge you. No force, this is a safe space, but just think about it, okay? So that's it for my video. I'm gonna finish my prawn cocktail crisps. Thank you so much for joining me. Hopefully you learn a bit more about my reading tastes, potentially. I don't know. Hope you're all well, stay safe, and peace out.